Hey, welcome back to the Reach Your Dew Point podcast. Here we are. It's great to be back with everybody. Thank you for subscribing or checking us out. And I am looking forward to today because I'm with a friend that I haven't seen in a while, whose initials here's a plan for me. I think I'm going to try to interview everybody who has the initials RA. I think that's important. And here's one who does. Rich Ackerman, welcome to the Dew Point podcast.
Thanks, Roy. It's great to be here. Thank you.
So Rich and I know each other for a long time, probably somewhere around 20 years or so. We were both in the same organization, or HDI, which is for IT support folks. And that's went back when Rich was on the technical side, but we're not talking very much about that today.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to talk about where he is now. And he is now the owner of Image with Vision Incorporated. And I'm going to read you, as is my habit, a little snippet of Rich's post biography on LinkedIn. It says, I founded Image with Vision Inc. to create deeply personal, archival quality photographic books and prints that bear witness to fragile ecosystems I've explored for decades. These are not casual snapshots. They're carefully composed works of devotion meant to stir stillness, not just awareness. And I'm going to stop right there and I'm going to say, what a cool phrase, meant to stir stillness. That is absolutely brilliant. I loved it the first time I read it. It's absolutely wonderful. Tell me a little bit more about what made you think of that. Stirring stillness is an interesting concept.
Yeah, the two books that I've done, one was really about an area that is vanishing, and that is the Southeast Alaska wilderness, the Tongass Forest.
That would be this book right back here, sitting on my bookshelf.
Okay. And the other the other one is about the dunes of Eastern Lake Michigan shoreline that goes from even from Chicago all the way up to the tip of the mitten, as they say. There is a tremendous amount of stillness in the places that I photograph, almost scary, quite frankly. And specifically in Alaska, more so, because it was an area that I really knew nothing about. I mean, I knew from history and reading about what's going on there. The dunes, I've lived pretty much in and about the dunes most of my life. Parents had property, 28 acres, literally about a block and a half from New Buffalo's dunes. And it really was a wonderful place to be. And there really was a stillness that I did try to capture in a lot of my photographs, and hoped that the viewers of the images, could see that stillness, perhaps allowing them to connect emotionally, intellectually, or even spiritually with the scenes that I tried to create for them.
And I think stillness is something that is often missing from our lives. We have so much going on with everything that's going on in the world and our own personal business lives and everything else. We're bombarded with information constantly. So stillness seems to be a very good idea. So thank you. And of course, I've been looking at your photographs online for years. As long as you've been posting them, I've been watching them. Well, and happy to be the proud owner of your book. So
I'm happy about that too.
Yeah. So the first book, which is the one that's displayed behind me here, is Southeast Alaska's Inside Passage, the Vanishing Wilderness. So it in your description says that it's a personal tribute to one of the last remaining temperate rainforest wildernesses on Earth. So when we think of rainforest, we usually think of places like the Amazon and so forth, but this is different from that. It's the climate is substantially different, right? So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, briefly, the Tongass rainforest, wilderness forest, is just that. It's temperate climate in Southeast Alaska, literally along the shoreline. It can be Well, these days it's somewhat up of 80 degrees. And as you go up towards the glaciers, obviously it's going to get colder. But in the rainforest itself, 50, 60 degrees most of the time, as opposed to if you were in the Amazon rainforest, it's going to be 80s, 90 degrees with 100% humidity. And the Tongass rainforest is not like that at all. And additionally, the climate that surrounds that forest is also similar to the climate within the forest. And and by the way, just when you go into this forest, you're probably never going to get any further than maybe 100 yards off the shoreline. It's like going into prehistoric times. There are no trails. Okay, you're cutting your own trails, if you will. So if there isn't a trail there, there are lots of root balls from 800-year-old Sitka trees, easy to fall in, trip up on. So when you're walking in there, but you know what, Roy? Even 50 yards off the shore is just amazing to see the ecosystem that exists there. And that to me was amazing.
Yeah, I guess a lot of people don't realize that there are rainforests elsewhere in the United States as well. Oregon, Washington, have rainforests areas, and again, usually when we think of rainforest, we think of jungle, but that's not the case.
Right.
So that is cool. And then
Yeah. Yeah.
go ahead.
I'm sorry. The rainforest that you're referring to in Oregon, Washington, and up actually through Vancouver, Canada, and extend up into that little southeast Alaska area is somewhat similar as the Tongass rainforest, but the Tongass rainforest is a nationally protected wilderness area in the United States.
Right, and let's hope it stays that way.
Yeah.
So then the other book is, and you do have a book signing coming up. Tell us a little bit about where that is and when that is for anybody who's in the Chicago area that might want to be
Right.
able to stop in.
That's going to be at Miles Books, which is a bookstore that I recently signed with. They're an independent bookstore in northern Indiana, one of the largest and very interesting bookstores. The aisles are narrow. He has a lot of historical books that you can go through and review. It's the only bookstore that you and I have ever been in where the owner knows exactly what the pricing is on every book without having any kind of a price label on it, which I found, interesting. When I heard that and saw that, I said, let's go. Let's do
Hmm.
Miles Books. That's going to be, the signing is on July 26th, running from 11:30 to 2 o'clock. And his bookstore is located in Highland, Indiana. I believe I don't have the exact address for me, but it's downtown Highland, which is really a small downtown area, if you will, from one of the towns in northern Indiana.
Cool. That's great that you're doing that, and that bookstore provides a good venue for you.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the dunes, which is what this particular book that you were talking about is about.
Mhm.
Um, I, for one, until I saw your photographs and we talked about it a little bit, did not realize that there was this whole ecosystem of dunes on around the Great Lakes, Lake Michigan's eastern shoreline, and I wouldn't have expected that. If I haven't spent a whole lot of time in that area. I do spend some time in Michigan. My brother lives in Michigan, but not around the lake. And I'm really interested in hearing more about that.
Yeah, it's actually the dunes on Lake Michigan shoreline are probably the largest and most well known dunes. I would have to say in the country, with the exception of there's a great dune in Colorado, in the lower, I believe it's the southeast corner of it. And honestly, Roy, I'm not really sure how those particular dunes were created, but the dunes where I live in the eastern shore were all left behind about 12,000 years ago by the Wisconsin Glacier. And when that glacier receded, it left behind sand, certainly cobble. There's some new things that are being learned about those dunes. The sand dunes themselves really didn't come about until about 5,500 years ago. So people ask, well, what was there? After the glaciers left, just water, wetlands, like a lagoon, if you will. And some of that is able to be discerned as you walk along a beach. You'll see layers along the shoreline with clay layers and dirt layers, and then sand. And as you go up the eastern shoreline, it's very similar. Sometimes the dune plateaus are almost flat. Other times those dunes get very high. In Sleeping Bear Dunes, the dunes sometimes can be several hundred feet high. And
Wow.
that to me is just the most amazing. We've had people try to walk down one of those dunes to the lake, and it's so steep when they try to come back, they're either out of breath or exhausted, especially during the summertime. And the park rangers have to go get a helicopter and bring you up, and then they charge you, I don't know how many, it's a couple $1,000s to pay for the expenses. Uh, but I like all the dunes. I'm close to the Indiana Dunes National Park. The dunes that I like and Rose and I favor are the Sleeping Bear Dunes just as well. They're different for different purposes. Um, Sleeping Bear Dunes is a national lake shore. It's not a national park, but it's much quieter. There's much less traffic there, much less amount of people that come up to see that area, especially in the fall or winter of the year. Indiana Dunes gets busy pretty much all year round. But they're one of the things that I would have to say is the people that are running both parks are extremely sharp and knowledgeable about how those dunes have formed and how to explain that to the visitors that come there, and makes it far more interesting when in fact you are there. And so in addition to that, I really decided, I guess to call it a dew point for me, to do the books because I don't think a lot of people really understood or knew how much deep or how deep or the depth of the ecosystem was in terms of, well, what do we got here? We got sand, we got water, we got, as you run back away from the shore, there's a succession, okay? Sand, it goes into a foredune, and there's mirum grass, which is a thin, small, thin grass, starts to build roots in the system, securing and stabilizing the sand instead of having the wind just blow sand all over the place. That evolves into even more plants, and ultimately it ends up in what we call a climax forest, which would be oak, generally oak, or in the sand dunes up in Sleeping Bear. It's usually beech and maple forests. So there's that. There's wetlands that have we have probably over 1,000 plants easily that are natural and native plants. Some of them actually came down from the northern part of Canada as those glaciers came down and then receded and left behind some of those plants, which makes it actually very fascinating. Stuff is unusual. There's different kinds of orchids. There's columbine. There's other, like I said, hundreds of those plants, and I photographed quite a few of them through my time in visiting the parks. And as I said, during the year, my family and I, we lived there and enjoyed it. Then what happened is that on some of the bluffs near the more populated area, people started building big mansions, and of course, they basically said, this is our land now. It used to be you could just walk on a trail and get down to the beach. Instead, they have blocked it off. It's basically, they're claiming it is their terrain. It really isn't. But it's changed the atmosphere of being a place that anybody could go to. And now they're basically saying, hey, you can't walk on our beach, and because it's our beach. So actually, that's not true in, say, Michigan and I want to say Wisconsin. So a little bit of the history of what's going on there.
So it's a sad thing when that happens because when people see the natural beauty and the natural diversity of the ecosystems, they have a tendency to pay more attention to it and care more about it than if they can't get there and it just becomes part of somebody else's backyard, essentially. So
Right.
it's
Exactly.
a sad thing.
So, so what I wanted to do with the books, kind of in a nutshell, was let people see what they can't see, or if they've seen areas or they enjoy certain areas, to be able to remember what they've seen and basically understand better what they've seen. And you know, like for me, I could sit out on in a foredune or a beach or in a forest and meditate, if you will. Now that I'm not doing IT technology business development, I can actually get into it. Um, but you have the opportunity to do that. And mostly what I'm finding is, wow, I didn't know that existed. Well, yeah, it's there. You guys go to the beach and bring your containers of pop and beer and whatever, and you go home and you don't take advantage of what's actually there. I think there's probably 50 or 60 trails alone in the Indiana dunes. Sleeping Bear Dunes is about 75, and a lot of those trails people aren't even on, but they're kept up. That's changing, obviously, because of the distraction we have in Washington. Um, but the people that manage the parks and seem to be doing a very good job of taking care of those parks during, I still call it's a distraction. And I'm impressed by that. And that makes me feel better about the people that live in our country and the people that go visit those parks. Even
Mhm.
though quite a few of them, that's all they go to the beach and go home. So that was kind of what I wanted to be able to do with those books. And, if they buy a book, they have something that they can remember the places they've been
Right.
and
Yeah,
see the environment.
so you made a very interesting choice, which was to make these black and white.
Yes.
They're the photographs are monochrome, and tell me a little bit. Whoops, tell me a little bit more about why you decided to go with the monochrome scheme.
Yeah, I get asked that probably more often than anything else. And the reason I've always been a fan of, Ansel Adams and Brett Weston, what I call the West photographers, and then even Alfred Stieglitz and on the East Coast, the photo successionists and realist photographers. And Adams and Fred Archer had a system called the Zone system, and it was designed around black and white photography. And without getting into the immense details, it's about being able to visualize all the way through, even before you take a picture with your camera, all the way through to when you make a print in the darkroom, or today when you put it out on, either Lightroom or some application that allows you to literally visualize that image before you decide to go to Instagram or Facebook or some other application. And that to me was immensely important to looking at things in black and white. And really more important to me was I found that black and white really set the detail apart from color. Color to me was like sparkling bits added to a photograph that absolutely were not really necessary to defining a beautiful slope, with details all the way into the deepest blacks and shadows and the highlights. Um, Aside from specular white highlights, you're able to reproduce that whole range of tones. Whereas with color, you actually can't do that unless you are starting to do some manipulation of the image in, say, Lightroom, Adobe's Lightroom, or Photoshop. And I try not to do that with any of my work. I will adjust lightness and darkness and contrast and cropping. That's all I will use any one of those two applications for. I compose when I'm shooting, and with nature, Roy, it's really interesting. The only thing you need to do in nature is sit your camera down. The subject doesn't move.
Mhm.
And so but you want to take the optimum viewpoint and, take advantage of the light to show them the best detail you can of your subject matter. But there are some things that I like shooting in color, certainly flowers that have a tremendous amount of color detail and striations of flower petals and detail of the inside of the flower, the head itself. But that's pretty much it. As I think about doing a second edition for both books, um, I will probably continue to do black and white of the Alaska book. Came home from Alaska with about 14,000 images. So
Wow.
there's more than enough to do a third edition, if you will. In the dunes, I have thousands of photographs. And so for me, it's going through my catalog and finding new images that I haven't really seen before, or taking existing images and recropping in another complete format to make a scene look totally different, if you will. So that's the
Interesting.
pre-visualization concept.
Yeah, that's amazing. And a lot of the really conscientious photographers that I know, including people like James Finister, shoot a lot in black and white. And I, I remember that my dad, who was a pretty good photographer, he had a couple of nice cameras. He had a Rolleiflex, and he had
Mm-hmm.
an Argus, and he had a Leica, and he enjoyed shooting in black and white. He would shoot Kodachrome slides if he wanted color, but a lot of times he would shoot black and white film. So it's fascinating to me, and your books are absolutely beautiful. They're a pleasure to see. So thank
Thank
you
you.
very much for doing them. And yes, you hit it right on the head. That was a dew point for you. You had a big dew point where you decided to go ahead and go into this, really dive into the image with vision. And that the name of your company actually says what you were talking about with framing the picture and thinking about that. It's the vision and then the image. It's a
Right.
fascinating take. So thank you so much for going through this.
Appreciate it.
If you're listening or watching again, Rich will be at Miles Bookstore on the 26th of July, 2025, and he will be there from 11:30. You said till about 2.
2 o'clock, 11:30 to 2, and it's in Highland, Indiana, which is, if you're trying to position yourself, it's near Munster or near Valparaiso. Those are the two places most people associate with
All right,
Northwest Indiana.
there you go. So thanks so much for coming on, Richard
Appreciate
DuPoint,
it.
and good to see you again.
You too.
And stick around, my friend. We'll chat a little bit after.
Okay. Thank you.